formal hello and welcome to the session. Thank you so much, everyone who's here today, for our January Let's Chat Live. I think the last one we did was the end of November, so it feels like it's been a really long time since you've all been here. So it's so lovely to see so many of you. And what I thought we'd do today is just chat about some tips for planning in January. Sorry, just letting some more people in then. If you've been to these sessions before, I've realised I can't do more than one thing at once. I can't let people in and chat at the same time. Let's just let this person in and then we get started. So for me, January comes with the pressure of new starts, to be decisive, to be organised and feel really energised about the new year ahead. But trust fundraising doesn't always follow that calendar. For some of us, January might be the start of a new year and a new financial year, but for many of you, your financial year won't begin until April. So actually January are your planning and pipeline months rather than a sprint to the finish month. So it does depend on when your new year starts. I also find at this time of year, internal capacity can be really patchy. You're trying to fit in the rest of your holiday before you lose it. If your year ends in March, you've got your budgeting cycles that you're coming up and reporting, and all these things seem to coincide in these first few months of the year. So is anyone feeling what I like to call that January wobble, that you should already have a full plan mapped out for the rest of the year and feel totally in control? I find that that's that new year pressure. We see it a lot on social media, don't we? Like we should all have these kind of goals that we want to set for the new year that we want to do. But it rarely reflects the sector we work in. Trust income moves in waves and tends to lag behind by at least 6 months from where we are and what we're planning to do. It's influenced by trustees meetings, grant cycles and response rhythms rather than it being a clean start to a new year. How many times have we seen things we've put in maybe in the summer last year coming into January, February this year, and if you've started a new year, it's just so complicated, is it, for us as trust fundraisers? So I wanted to do a couple of polls, if this works, fingers crossed everyone, to see where everyone is in their financial year and how planned you feel for the year ahead. So let me just see if we can launch this poll. Bear with me. Here we go, polls. And I should have set this all up ready to go. So hopefully this is just going to work brilliantly. Here we go. Fingers crossed. There we go. That should have all come out to you. So if you want to take a couple of seconds to do the poll, and then we'll have a look at the responses. So it's just looking at where you are in your financial year, how planned you feel for the year ahead, and how confident you are in your pipeline for the next 6 months. So if you want to take a couple of minutes to answer that, that would be amazing. And then we can have a look at the results. Ed, I love a poll as well. I'm just glad that it worked. And that we've got some responses. So that means it's definitely working, which is brilliant. 21 responses. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you to everyone who's been popping their introductions into the chat as well. Like I said earlier, it's so great to see so many returning people, but also some new names as well that have popped up. So I really hope you find these sessions useful. So let's have a quick look at where we are with the poll and see some of these responses. Bear with me. So most people, go back to the beginning, are in quarter 4 of their financial year, so they haven't started their new year yet. So that new year feeling, you're probably not feeling right now, are you? Because you're kind of doing that race to the finish. Your new year starts in April, when you can start thinking afresh and thinking differently. You're trying to plug those gaps and see where you are at the minute. And then some people are in Q1, about 27% are in their Q1, so that's really helpful. 2% we don't work in quarters, that's really interesting. I've never known anywhere that doesn't work in quarters. How planned do you feel for the year ahead? Most people say that they're partly planned. So that's interesting, isn't it? Like, I think at this time of year, sorry, can I just ask you to put yourselves on mute if you haven't already? Just because we're getting some feedback coming through there, which can be a bit distracting for people. Thank you so much. Yeah, most people said partly planned, 58% partly planned, 26% mostly planned, nobody, well, 2% are fully planned, which is interesting. 11% are barely planned, not planned, or not panicking just yet, with the 2%. So a good mix there, but mostly people partly planned. And then looking at confidence, say mixed. I'd say that's kind of where most people are feeling now, isn't it? You know, it's a mixed confidence. We kind of, as trust fundraisers, go into things with a little bit of kind of optimism, I think, because we want to do a good job and we want the year to work out really well. But I think the most we could probably say is mixed. 4% are extremely confident, so that's amazing. You must have some great things in your pipeline. 25% somewhat confident, and 17% not confident at all. So I'm hoping for those that feel a bit mixed and not confident or somewhat confident, there'll be some tips in today's session that you can take away that might help you feel a little bit more confident with things. So I have 7 tips that I'd like to share with you. And if you have any tips that you want to share, or any thoughts about any of the tips that I'm going to share today, any ways that you're already using these, or interesting things that you feel people should know, please do pop them in the chat. Because it's really, really helpful for people to see some of these things that are working, or some ideas about challenges and things like that as we move through. So my first tip is thinking about confidence. When we talk about planning as trust fundraisers, there's often this assumption that you should already have a tidy pipeline, updated confidence ratings, clarity on what's being renewed, where there's opportunities, and a strategic sense of where the gaps are. And don't get me wrong, all these things would be great to have in an ideal world. But in reality, very few of us start the year with that level of certainty. Sometimes you know that there's a gift you've been promised that's going to come in the new year, or you know that you're going to get continuation funding, and that all helps us to feel a little bit more confident. But when decisions can take up to 6 months to make, and then project timelines don't always line up neatly with those funding cycles, that can get us to have that mixed confidence, that, you know, uneasy feeling about our pipelines. But I think planning is fundamentally a mindset game. Most plans begin really messy. You know, when we're planning out something for the first time, maybe you're going to do some renovations at home, we write out a messy list. We write out our aspirations. We write what we want to get done. We might note down some colours that we want to do for the wall, but we don't necessarily have a plan. Most plans begin that messy way and then evolve as your information arrives, as you do your renovations, as you're starting to plan, as you get some of your information, some of your wins come through. The trick is to plan from the information you already have, which is where your pipeline becomes a really useful tool. You look at the bids you have out there, the multi-year funding you've already secured, the funding you're confident you might get again, opportunities that look promising, and the rejections that you can learn from. And then you take the organisation priorities that are starting to take shape, and kind of look at all those to shape your pipeline. That helps build your confidence in what you're seeing and helps you identify any gaps really early, so you know what you're working towards. I mean, it's never going to be perfect at this stage, is it? Because there's too many variables, there's too many different things. But confidence will help you prioritise, and that then becomes what's realistic rather than what's overwhelming. So when you think about starting to plan, What's the bit that feels hardest? Capacity, certainty, input from your colleagues, or just knowing where to begin? What's kind of, when you're looking at doing your planning, when you're sat down with your pipeline, what really helps you to plan? Jessica shared something with us. She's trialing a new thing this year, not my idea. Every Friday I write out the following week, giving myself 3 big things and 3 small things on each working day. Big things might be start drafting XBid, proof XBid, write stewardship for X funder, etc. Small things are all the admin stuff that Jessica says she's terrible at. I'm sure she isn't.
I think that and
then using CAM recording. She's finding it's working really, really well. Sorry, can I ask you to pop yourself on mute if you've just joined? Thank you. And then it says I book 5 to 3 every Friday off to do my Razor's Edge admin. Yeah, and we're going to talk about some of those kind of work planning and mindset things that we can do to get ourselves in the right headspace to do some of those things that we don't like doing, like our admin, and how to use our energy to do some of those things as well. So that's tip 1. And then tip 2 is how we use our pipelines. We often look at them as purely a forecasting tool, something maybe your senior leadership or your board want to see to get a sense of how the year looks financially. And yes, they can absolutely do that. But for trust fundraisers, I think they're far more valuable as a thinking tool. A good pipeline should help you understand what opportunities are out there, what applications you're waiting to hear from, what worked well, what didn't, and where you need to do more on stewardship or develop those relationships, and making sure that you're prioritizing, not just the ones that need the bids in, although that's really important, but also those ones where you do need to do the stewardship and you do need to develop those relationships before you can move forward. That should then help you allocate time, manage expectations, and spot gaps before they turn into a crisis. Forecasting is the bonus once things get moving, and realistically, the quality of that forecast will improve over time as decisions come in, as your confidence ratings shift, as that information lands. Don't forget, as trust fundraisers, we're dealing with funding cycles, planning meetings, criteria shifts, opportunities closing left, right, and centre. It's organised uncertainty is what I like to call it, and by having a pipeline that helps us think and spot those opportunities and put our time in the best places, it becomes more than just a forecasting tool. It's more honest and it's more useful. I find it more useful, and it's not down to optimistic guesswork. You put the work in by making sure your pipeline is as up to date and useful as possible to help you make all these decisions and have those honest conversations internally if you need to. So does anybody use their pipeline in that way? Have you always just thought about it as a forecasting tool for money? Because for a long time that's what I did. It was just a list. And it was just, I've asked for this and I've got that and I haven't got this. And sometimes it can be really depressing to look at your not got this time, especially in the current landscape. But once I started using it as more of my thinking tool and my planning tool and spotting those gaps and giving myself permission to use it differently, it really opened my eyes to a different way of looking at it. I think before I was using it as a forecast to satisfy finance or my senior leadership team or the trustees rather than using it as a tool for me. And since I've done that, that's really, really helped me look at it differently. Erica from the previous tip that we had, said she found it most useful to understand the priorities of the charity. No point applying for funding for something that won't be useful to us, even if it fits with the funder's priorities. Absolutely. And again, one of the tips that we go on to will be looking at that and how to use those priorities and giving ourselves permission to look at priorities rather than volume. Fantastic. So tip 3 is, I think this slide touches a little bit onto this. Successful trust fundraising requires constant attention to fit and alignment, just as Erica was saying. But what I find is good to do at this time of year is to take a wider step back, look at your pipeline, which potential funders in your pipeline truly align with your organization's current priorities, that you could write in a bid, write in a letter of introduction, an expression of interest. This is how we fit your priorities. This is the time now to have a look and either make them less of a priority in your own pipeline or weed them out completely. Which ones might be low likelihood of support? Why are they still in my pipeline? What do I see here with that trust that I'm keeping you in my pipeline? Is it because if I get rid of too many, I feel like I haven't got the volume, the numbers that I need to hit my target? Are there ones maybe sat in my prospecting list that I could move into the pipeline because they're a better fit? I just haven't got round to prioritizing that research yet because I'm so busy concentrating on some of these that have been sat in my pipeline historically and I just keep applying to. Now's a really good time to make space for that prospecting, adding in new, stronger fit prospects rather than simply increasing that volume, stressing yourself out because your list is just getting longer and longer, but your chance of success is probably getting smaller because you've got lots of trust sat in your pipeline that potentially aren't a good fit anymore, never were a good fit. You know, there's lots of different reasons why we might put people into our pipeline. So that's another way of having a look at it. If you've got lots of potential trusts on your prospect list that you haven't got around to researching, is that because they require more capacity than you have at the minute? You're worried about increasing the volume in your pipeline? This would be a good way of weeding some of them out. Do they require some relationship building or network mapping that's holding you back? Is that something, if they're a really good fit and alignment and you're looking to replace one in your pipeline that isn't a good fit, that's the really good time to look at that one, even if it requires a little bit more attention because you need to network map or you need to relationship build. This is the time to give yourself permission to do those things that maybe we put off doing, we put to the back because we think we need to just be concentrating on getting those bids out. But if we're using our pipeline as thinking tools, if we're stepping back and giving ourselves permission to do that, this is where it starts opening out that it is about permission, isn't it? That permission to look at it in a different way, and maybe get rid of some of the dead wood that's in there that you've been holding on to for a while. You're building your confidence in your pipeline by actively managing it. You're not waiting for those opportunities to appear or blindly applying to the same trusts every year just because they're there in your pipeline. You're taking an objective step back. You're really looking at whether you're making the most of your opportunities and your own time. You know, a lot of you I know are working on your own, so you're doing this on your own. There's only so much time that you have to give. So it's being kind and gentle to yourself and making sure you're making the best of your time and the best of the opportunities that you have. Joanna says, using the pipeline as a thinking tool. I love that. Important to be clear with colleagues about the difference between thinking and forecasting. Absolutely. You can absolutely still use your pipeline as a forecasting tool. You know, that is really important, and it's a good way of seeing financial gaps and how you're going to fill them and having those internal conversations with colleagues and your senior leadership team, your trustees, but using it as a thinking tool as well, doing some of these things by making space for prospecting in your pipeline, with really taking a hard look at your pipeline and making sure everyone is as aligned to your priorities and their priorities as possible, just helps you use that tool better. So I hope that's helpful. And then this kind of goes hand in hand that with tip 4. Like I said, you're mostly doing this on your own, aren't you? And you're covering so much. I'm going to list it all and it's going to sound like loads. Are you ready? Research, cultivation, applications, reporting, pipeline management, budget, internal coordinations, sometimes project coordinations, sometimes coming up with new projects. If you need to, working with your internal teams to do that. Doesn't hearing all that make you realise how much you actually do and how much you have to juggle? Like I said earlier, when the new year arrives, we default to that new year position. We have to do everything different. We this is the year that we're going to plan to do everything that's on our list. Loads of prospecting, loads of new applications, loads of new sector research. We're going to improve our stewardship. We're going to do stronger reporting, the whole lot. But actually, for trust fundraisers, prioritisation is the most important skill that we can develop. Choosing what to do or what to delay, or what not to do even, is often the thing that saves a year from derailing. Now, I don't know if you've come across this before. It's called the Pareto principle. I'm probably butchering that that word. I did have the Wikipedia link, but I don't seem to have it now to post into the link. But hop onto Wikipedia and have a look. But I think it beautifully applies to trust. 20% of your bids usually deliver 80% of your outcomes. How much like trust does that sound? You know, we're putting so much out there in the hope that this 20% that we get actual funding from is going to help us deliver 80% of what we set out to do that year. So making sure that those bids that we're putting out there and focusing your best energy on renewals, the highest likelihood bids, or those that are really strategically important, that we've got a really good relationship with, that we want to enhance things with, that we need to do some more relationship building with, that's where we need to be putting our best time and energy. When I'm working with the charity as a consultant, I often look at their average grant ask. If that's low compared to their target expectations, that helps me understand whether they're prioritising the right trusts or going for everything that feels like a fit. So if you don't have that as part of your pipeline, that's something I really recommend adding in as part of your KPIs and having a look at, because I did it with a hospice recently, and when we had a look, they were putting out some great bids, but they were putting out high volume, and that was really bringing down their average ask. And yeah, it's not all about the ask that, you know, the amount that ask that we're putting out there, but when you look at it in that kind of frame, if your average ask is really low, you're putting lots of time and energy into lots of small bids, lots of things that aren't necessarily going to pay off because the fit to priorities and the alignment isn't there. So it's a good kind of test, without deep diving too much into actually where are we? Am I spending my time in the best way? Do I need to be looking at larger grants where I can uplift my average? And it doesn't have to be by month. Instead of going for £1,000, we might look for those that are 5,000, 10,000. We're not talking about £100,000 here to uplift that average. And it's making sure that even if we're putting decent bids out there that are in that £10,000 kind of bracket, if we're doing lots and lots of those, that can potentially bring our average gift down too, and they're not always going to be an amazing fit. Long gone are the days when a high volume of applications would yield results. The landscape now means we need to be focused on excellent prospecting, excellent research, good relationship building, good quality applications to those who really align with us and align with our work, and then stewardship. This is where compassion for your future you comes in. Don't load months with every renewal, every new approach, every new prospecting you want to do in reporting. Spread that work out where you can. Look at where your crunch points are in your pipeline. Look at what's coming down the road that you know you're going to need to do lots of applications, say in May, might be a crunch month for you. So try not to set yourself time to do lots of prospecting there or lots of strategic work, or because you know you're going to need the headspace to do all of those bits. So Erica's asked a question: how much should we ask for when there is a guidance giving? If the funder says they give grants of 10 to 50, 1,000 to 5,000, is there more chance of success if we ask for 5,000 or if we ask somewhere in the middle? For me, when I'm looking at that, I go into their accounts, which are usually on the Charity Commission, and have a look at what their average gift is as a starting point, and then have a look at that, how that matches with the project that I want to put forward. So if, for example, in a £1,000 to £5,000 kind of grant range, then I would look, and maybe their average gift is £2,000. So then I look at how that fits with the project that I want to put forward. What difference would £2,000 make to that project? Is it the number of people that it might help, the number of sessions that you might be able to run, the number of dogs that you might be able to treat because of that, and work out if that's a good place. But for me, I would be looking at their accounts and looking at what their average gift is, because if that's usually the area that they feel comfortable giving. And then if you stewardship well and you do some great impact reporting and show them what they're being able to do with that funding, when you apply again, you can ask for a little uplift and show them what their support's been able to do, and why a little bit more to push you up to nearer to that £5,000 would be good. So if you do, people generally go for a lower amount if they haven't donated before, or go higher with the expectation that they may reduce the donation. Again, I would have a look at that average grant and see what they usually give. And again, it depends on the project that you're putting forward. You know, if £2,000 can make a real difference to that project, then go for something around the average. If you need a little bit more, what does your project need? What would it benefit from? What would make the most impact from? But looking at that average grant amount really helps you just kind of see where they feel most comfortable giving. And if you look and they have given some massive grants, I always take them out of my calculation, because otherwise it really skews what their average grant, and it usually tends to be higher. And the ones where the ones where they're giving those higher amounts is where they've had a really long-term relationship, or the trustees are really well known to the charity, and they've given that as a kind of one-off. Sarah says, I tend to go midway or lower if no relationship and their accounts show a wide range. I assume they're likely to give larger to charities they have a track record with. Yeah, there is always that kind of thing to take into account as well. If you go back over accounts for a few years and see the same names popping up and they're getting the larger amount, that's usually because they have that track record or the relationship with. But again, you know, rather than looking at the midway or lower point, if their accounts show a wide range, you can still work out what an average grant is, and go for something around that, if that fits in with your project and what your project needs, and that it shows impact. Just says, thank you. I've deliberated so much over not wanting to disappoint internal expectations, but balancing how to build relationships and secure a grant. It's really hard, and I think what we're seeing as trust fundraisers at the moment is that the way we approach trust is becoming more akin to the way we would approach a major donor. It's a lot more about that research, that alignment, that priority fitting, the building of those relationships before we even put pen to paper, and then the stewardship afterwards. It's not about volume anymore. It's about priority and fit and relationships, and being able to slow down and use your pipeline in that way, to find those opportunities and make the most of them, and use your time the best way that you can, kind of hopefully helps you have those internal conversations. Sophie says, if you're going for project funding, do people tend to apply to a variety of trusts with the expectation they won't say yes? If they all say yes, you have the risk of the project being double funded. If this happens, would you just be transparent with the funder? Absolutely. If we're looking at that Pareto model, 80-20, you know, 20% are going to fund 80% of our outcomes, then you need a lot out there to be able to get and hit your targets for that project. If we have the wonderful thing that very rarely happens, where they all absolutely say yes of the project, yes, there's a risk of it being double funded, but if you go back and are really transparent with that funder, they often let you keep it so you can expand the project. Maybe you can add more people. You know, if your project could only do it for 100 people, maybe the extra funder will let you do it for 50 more people, so the impact of that project becomes greater. greater, so it helps all of your funders who have given. But yeah, I would absolutely have that conversation with a funder if you're in the enviable position that you get more money than you need for a project. Always be open and honest and transparent with any funders, even if something's gone wrong. You know, maybe the number of people that you hope to have isn't as good as you thought. Always have those conversations with a funder early, so it's not a shock when your end of grant report comes through. There might be things that they can help you with. There might be conversations that you can have about changing the parameters of the project that they've supported. So I would always be open and honest with a funder. Ruth, I understand the concept of not going for the smallest grants, big volume, if your overall funding need is high, but I've lost so many of the bigger funders out of my pipeline this coming year because of funders capping turnover at $1 million. I feel like my bum has fallen out my trousers. Absolutely. That's not a saying I've heard before, Ruth, but it's an interesting one. I shall be logging it for use later. No, I absolutely. For me, smaller trusts are always going to be your bread and butter. I think it's just making sure that those smaller trusts that you're going for are really, really well aligned. There's lots of trusts out there that are general funders, and when you look in their accounts, they don't really tell you very much, and maybe you can apply for £500, £1,000. If you're looking at priority and where best to use your time, I wouldn't necessarily go for those ones now. If you get nearer to the end, you know, 6 months out from your end of year, and you know that you're going to have gaps to fill and you've got the time to go for some of those ones, there's no reason why you shouldn't. But when you're planning out your year, your priority should be with those ones that are best aligned, even if they're the smaller grants, the ones where you've built those relationships or can build those relationships because you've got a good way in, or you know how to build it. You can go to some of the Meet the Funder events, you can build up, you've got some great website content, some good impact figures behind you to look at that. It's not necessarily about cutting all those small grants out completely if those small grants are really, really well aligned to what you do, because I know it's really tough, particularly when you get over a certain amount. You become so big or you're so small that your opportunities are limited. It's about using your time to the best that you can do. Rachel asks, has anyone got any great prospect research tools? We're thinking of buying funds online, but wondered if there was another tool we should check out. I would recommend Grin and the Grin database. It's really low cost and a good tool to use. You get weekly emails that come through as well. And I would look at the Charity Excellence database too, which is another free tool, and that has a good searchable grant database, and you also get updates as well if you sign up. Those are two to have another look at. I find with things like funds online and grants online, I think sometimes their data isn't as up to date as maybe if I would like, and then I would have to go and research a lot of those things as well. And if you're paying a lot of money to use those tools, that can be frustrating when you're looking again at how best to use your time. But I'm sure some other people will give you some, I'm going to pin that for everybody so you can reply and give some advice there as well, if there's any good ones that Rachel can have a little look at. And if anyone's got any feedback on using funds online as well, that would probably be really useful for her. Bethan, our average grant ask is definitely lower than our targets. We find it incredibly difficult to find any prospects offering larger grants aside from the classic big ones. We're a team of 2 and so much of my time is spent prospecting, but I still feel like I can hardly find any opportunities. Are you able to give any excellent prospecting advice beyond the usual search options? Let's have a think. It's really hard, isn't it? And I think it depends on what your area is that you're trying to prospect for. Some things it's just not kind of the thing of the moment, and so you'll really find it hard to find those opportunities. So I think in some cases it's having that internal conversation about the capacity for trust fundraising for your organisation and where it might go. There is absolutely funds out there for everyone to go for. It just might not be enough to hit your targets, and it's a really hard conversation to have, but it's maybe something that you have to start kind of laying it out there, that there's a ceiling for what is possible for trust and grants for your particular organisation. It's just one of those really tricky things. Trust and grants don't fit every charity organisation. It doesn't fit every what we were talking the other day with I was talking to a breastfeeding group that were looking for funding and things like that, although you can go down the women's route. There isn't a massive amount of funding out there for women in this particular circumstances, and looking for things that would support breastfeeding, particularly if you look at the kind of health side of it, and mental well-being of the bond of breastfeeding and stuff. You can go down all these different routes, but there is only so much where they're going to want to support that kind of thing. So the ceiling for what they could go for from trust and grants just wasn't going to. So that's when they were looking to then diversify their portfolio and look at other different ways that they could support trusts fundraising through those different income streams. The only other thing to do is to have a look if you can diversify what you're doing through trust. So if you're looking at a specific if we look at animals, for example, one of the things that we've done, because animal welfare, although really well supported by the public, trust and grants is really hard to get funding for animal welfare, is to look at the different ways you can approach that. So animal welfare can also be really good for mental health, particularly for older people. Pet ownership is really good. Pet ownership for young people is really good. You often hear these stories of little ones that aren't very confident in reading to their dogs and things like that, and that helps build that confidence. It helps build skills for the future because you're taking care and looking after an animal. So I would have a look at if there's different ways that you can approach what you're doing and what the outcomes and impact of what you're doing, so it might be able to fit in more funding streams within the trust fundraising landscape. I hope that makes sense, Pathin. So one, it's really difficult, and sometimes there is a ceiling for what you can get from trust and grants for particular causes. And two, have a look to see whether you can approach what you're doing from a different angle and see whether you can diversify what you're asking for into some of those other tranches. So mental health, community. Are there other things that you can do to present what you're doing in a slightly different way? But unfortunately, there's no magic wand, is there, for that kind of thing. Brilliant. People are giving some really good advice around funds online and what else to use. Lots of shout outs for Charity Excellence and for Grin. Amazing. It says Grin is superb. It's only £15. So yeah, Grin is great. Yeah, and Hinchilla, that's a new one that I've signed up for at the moment, that I'm just testing to see the kind of things that come through there. And you get daily updates on that one as well. So Lisa, senior management have said this year that they want me to focus on securing transformational multi-year grants, preferably unrestricted. Isn't that like the god of gods, like transformational multi-year grants, unrestricted? We're all after those. I made some very early stage inroads with a couple of large invite-only funders last year, but I don't know how realistic their expectation is. What else can I do to cultivate a relationship with invite-only funders other than securing meetings for our programme colleagues to meet them and talk in detail about our programmes? They're not UK based. Look at your trustees, do some network mapping. Do any of your major donors know any of their trustees? Do your trustees know any of their trustees? Do you have a warm way in? Usually, you've done really well to secure some meetings with invite-only funders. So I would absolutely try and pursue that. There's something there that is ticking the box to get past that gatekeeper. But I would definitely do some network mapping and see if you can find a warm way in. Even some of your volunteers might know somewhere. It's really surprising when those warm leads can come from. I would definitely look at network mapping and seeing whether you can get those warm ways in. If you're already having luck with getting some very early stage inroads. In terms of realistic, I mean, we are all looking for that, aren't we? Those transformational multi-year grants. That's absolutely what we want, preferably unrestricted. You can get unrestricted funding from trusts. It's really, really difficult. You can build it into your projects, is the most straightforward way to do that. So that it just becomes a language that you're using around your projects, and your core funding just become intertwined. And one, we have got a webinar, on-demand webinar, about how to do that if you're interested in learning more about that. But it's unrestricted funding isn't the best to get from trust and grants, just because the nature of it, they want to see that immediate impact through projects. Multi-year grants, again, we're all trying to secure those multi-year grants to just give us a little bit of breathing space, if nothing else, isn't it? And transformational, it depends what sector you're in, what you're looking to transform. All trusts want to feel like their input through their grants will be transformational for you as an organisation, that you will have amazing impact and outcomes and outputs because of what they've been able to put in to you. So we should all be talking about ourselves in that way. It's a really hard landscape at the moment, isn't it? So but I think you're doing some really great things to be able to get some early inroads with them. But I would go down the network mapping, how to explore that a bit more and see if you can find some warm ways in. Lots of great advice being shared about where to look for prospects. Fantastic. So I find it useful to look at the annual accounts websites of similar organisations and see if they list trusts which have given grants to them. I think organisations are getting wise to the fact that we do that, though, because I've seen less and less of that in their annual accounts and on their websites and things, unless it's a particularly big organisation where they've asked them to kind of promote that they've been supported. And I think trusts are also getting wise to that, because that's where people are picking up and seeing their name that they've supported something similar, and that they're getting applications in that way as well. So it's a practice I've seen less and less. Oh, if anybody has the link for Grin to share with Carl, if that hasn't already been done, that would be, oh, someone's already done it. I didn't even need to say it, Joanna. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really helpful. Brilliant. I was just catching up with all the. So let's skip to tip 5. We've got 15 more minutes left, so we'll be able to get through some of these. Thank you so much for your input, by the way, guys. It's really, really helpful to hear everyone else's experience and where everyone else is as well. I think sometimes a problem shared and hearing about what other people are going through really helps, doesn't it? So I think that even the most organised pipeline and prioritised plan, and you've got all of this stuff in place, collapses if your capacity isn't considered. It's not just about hours in the day, it's about energy and focus. High value applications, complex bids, and strategic prospecting all require more of your time and mental capacity. So one practical approach is to energy map. I don't know about you, but I am so much better in the morning. I mean, I start work at 8, but I could probably, if I didn't have a daughter to get to school, start work at 7 and feel just as energized. But by the time I get to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, my energy levels are low. My interest in connecting or having any meetings at that time of day is really low. But I know other people that come alive at that time of night, and they'd be better off working till 11 o'clock at night. They don't want to do early morning meetings. It's just not for them. So the best thing to do is know that about yourself, and then plan for your most demanding work when you're freshest, and leave those tasks that we were talking about before, those tasks that we don't like doing, like the admin tasks, for those lower energy times. So like Ed said, I think that he plans out on a Friday that he's going to do his admin. That must be, Ed, when your energy is at its lowest and you just need some kind of tasks that you can get through and feel accomplished and feel like you've done something, but doesn't take as much brain capacity for a Friday afternoon. 110%. So says. So I think protecting focus time in your calendar based on when your energy peaks and troughs in a day could be you're really good on a Monday. You do all your best work on a Monday, but come Friday, you're good for no one and you can't do anything. So that is your admin day, unless you've got a bid that is absolutely needs to be in that day, or you work better in the morning and not so much at night. So know this about yourself and plan out your time and energy and set that time aside. Like Ed was saying, he blocks it out on a Friday to do that. Block it out in your calendar so that you start building those protected times for yourself, and you can leave yourself a little bit of slack. Things rarely go exactly to plan. You might have unexpected requests or delays for getting information. This is just inevitable in trust fundraising, isn't it? But try and block yourself out and give yourself permission to do that. So Stephanie says, do you all only do fundraising, or do you have any other responsibilities too? So that's an interesting to see how people are using their time, because if you're doing more than just fundraising, I know a lot of people, a lot of CEOs in particular, wear a lot of different hats, and they will do some fundraising but also have to do all the day-to-day, probably be HR and that kind of thing as well. Angela suggests putting on an out of office to protect times like completing a bid or important admin that you've got to do. Absolutely, that's a good way. Turning off your emails as well is another really good thing that you can do to protect your time, so you're not tempted to have a look at those emails and do something that's just come in. Lots of people are saying that they've got too many hats to count. This is brilliant. Grants, individual giving, evaluation, pretty much. Holly says, I protect my Wednesdays for bid writing. She works 3 days a week. So people are doing some of this as well and juggling lots of complex things. And that, again, if you're doing lots of different things and wearing lots of different hats, Keris is doing social media and website management too on top of her fundraising. Angela does it all. Sometimes it feels like we all do, doesn't it? Being able to map when your energy is its highest and its lowest, and how best to use that ebb and flow really does help you feel accomplished and like you're getting on, and that you're feeling confident around what you've got to do. And if you've got more pull on your time, setting out some dedicated time to do fundraising or do your website development or do whatever it is you need to do is really, really important. When I'm working with lots of different clients, and supporting them with their trust fundraising, I block out dedicated days that are for them, and I will concentrate on them, and I will be disciplined about, if somebody else asks for help that day, if it's an easy 5-minute question, I'll do something for them. If it's something that requires a bit more brain power, I'll wait until the day that's been allocated to them. And they also know that too, and we work with that kind of ebb and flow of when things need to be done. It just helps protect your own peace as well, doesn't it? So tip 6, I think one of the most overlooked aspects of planning is giving yourself time to make sure your foundation documents are ready. So your case for support, any organisational stats you need, any of the stories you want to tell, to make sure that they're all current and compelling. Refreshing your case for support doesn't mean doing a full rewrite. We don't necessarily have time to do that, but it should reflect any new projects that you have, any changes in your service delivery, any updated outcomes and impact, any recent successes that you've had, and any updated stats that you have, because that gives credibility and helps you show that impact. And also, when you're doing some of that prioritization work, when you're looking at are these trusts still aligned with what we do, having those up-to-date stats, having those up-to-date impact and priorities in your case for support helps you make those decisions, because you can easily see, this is the position we're in now, do we match against what this trust wants to achieve? And then having all of that to hand cuts down on the time that you need, and you're then being able to drop all of this into your applications, because you've got some paragraphs, you've got the stats that you need, you're building a really good application that makes it easier for those funders to say yes. Don't forget the why us, the why now. Look at that urgency. Why do they need to support you above anybody else right now, this minute? And giving yourself time for those elements of planning too. I was having a conversation with a colleague about, when we're working with clients, we often set aside the time to do the work for the client, but we don't always set aside the time to put that planning in place and make sure that we've got the time we need to make sure everything we want is there and ready to go, so we can get down to it and get to work. So then we have to find extra time that's not the client's time to do that work. So making that easy for yourself by giving yourself and factoring in that time is really, really important. And the last tip, when things feel uncertain or stretched, small, practical habits make a real difference. Having those ready to go stats, having those ready to go paragraphs and beneficiary stories saves your mental energy. Batching similar tasks, like doing all your admin on a Friday, doing all your research on a Tuesday morning, because that's when you feel most refreshed, doing your reporting in an afternoon slot, because again, you work better in the afternoon. That increases your efficiency and reduces that cognitive switching. I think sometimes we're very good at it as humans, but I think sometimes we don't give it its credit for how much that can affect us and how exhausting that can be, to switch from writing a report in one section to writing a bid in another, to doing some admin tasks and switching between those things, looking at your emails. That can really have a mental drain on you. Celebrate your small wins. We talk about this a lot in these lives, but it's really important, especially if you're working on your own. You don't always have somebody that can pat you on the back. And as trust fundraisers, I don't know about you, we're very good at being self-starters. We're very good at just getting on, and sometimes we don't give ourselves the credit for a successful renewal, a well-approached and well-targeted approach, a completed piece of research. Give yourself time to celebrate that you've done that. Go make yourself a cup of tea. Go make yourself a coffee. Take yourself out for a nice lunch so you just get a break away. Come back and do some admin tasks as a reward for getting that big piece of work done. You can just focus on something that doesn't take as much mental capacity. It helps build your confidence and helps build the momentum. It might feel like tiny little steps when you've got a massive pipeline and a massive to-do list, but they are a gentle reminder that planning isn't just about big decisions. It's about creating space for action and progress, no matter how small those things are. Being gentle to ourselves, being gentle to our future selves, and what we might overload our pipelines with later down the line. So we've covered a lot today, from mindset and confidence through to pipelines and prioritization, capacity, funder prep, practical habits. The key, I think, is that planning in trust fundraising is less about perfection and more about creating momentum, managing energy, making the best decisions with the information that you have. So I put some kind of reflection points on the screen. Which tip will have the biggest immediate impact for you from today? Could be updating your case for support. You could go away and go, in February, I'm going to do that. Could be clearing out those low fit prospects that have just been sat on your trust pipeline. Could be scheduling prospecting blocks, looking at your energy mapping and seeing when you need to protect a focus window when you work really, really well. You're not supposed to implement everything at once. Again, this is about being gentle and mindful about yourselves, but it's knowing that these things exist to help you and that you might find them helpful. When you watch this back on the record, there might be things there that you want to have a closer look at. We have got a tiny amount of time if anybody's got any questions. Kathy says, I'm going to be ruthless with my inherited pipeline. I can't see the wood for the trees. And I think that's the key there. It's your inherited pipeline, isn't it? So you don't feel so bad if you're getting rid of ones that somebody else put in your pipeline for you. That for me gives me the green light to absolutely go through and be ruthless with that pipeline and do what you need to do so you can see what the actual prospects are in there. Rachel says, if you are in a fundraising only role, how much do you do the project planning and management, setting the project budget, monitoring and evaluation and reporting? I feel like these roles are very vague and inconsistent in my organisation, and I wonder how others do it. So is that for the do the project planning management. So I think it depends on how big your organisation is and how many other people are in a position to be able to pick up some of those things for you. As a trust fundraiser, I have always picked up the reporting, but I've always relied on those doing the service delivery to provide me with all of that information, the objectives. The budget setting should be done with the project manager and the finance department. Project planning management, that shouldn't sit with a fundraiser unless you are in an organisation that where you do wear those many hats, and there is nobody else to do it. If that's falling on you and you don't work in that kind of organisation and there are other people that could do that for you, I would definitely have that internal conversation, because freeing some of those things from you to enable you to focus more on the fundraising side would probably make you feel like you're in a better position or more in control. But that's, in my experience, I've worked in a small organisation and a large organisation as a fundraising manager, and those things are just the reporting sat within my role. I might have those conversations with the project manager, the people who are delivering it, to make sure that what they're achieving and what we say we're going to achieve all fit within the application that I'm making, but I certainly wouldn't have been responsible for those things. Steve says, how do people use the CRM system to track trusts and foundations? Do you input trusts that you've researched and seem like a good fit, or only add them once you've applied? I add them even if they're not a good fit, because that saves me if they're absolutely no good fit, never going to fit, I still add them in, because if that name comes up again, how many of us had a note from senior leader or a trustee saying that, have you looked at this one? You can easily go in and see that you've already researched it, and that it isn't a good fit. But I would put everything in to your CRM system, good, bad, ugly, everything, so that you always know what's in there, but then have your priority list, whether that's on a separate spreadsheet or you have a way in Beacon to be able to highlight those ones that are priority for you. I like a good old-fashioned spreadsheet, even when I'm using a CRM system, to help me keep track. Lots of good answers for everybody else there. I'm just, before you all dash off, I'm just going to let you know that we're doing our first live webinar of the year, where we'll be focusing on how to increase your trust success rates. So looking at writing proposals to help them stand out in this really crowded market. At the minute, we're offering 50% off if you use the code that's on screen, if you book by the 17th of February. That one will be on the 5th of March at 11 a.m. It will be live with me, so you can ask all of your questions. It will be really practical and interactive. That one should normally be £45 plus VAT, so that's a really good deal if you were interested in coming along to that one. Louisa, I colour code my funder prospects list in the traffic light system. I love a traffic light system. That is how I do my pipeline list in a traffic light system, so I can absolutely see where I am. Highly recommend that one. Brilliant. I think that's everybody's questions. We've run a little bit over time, so I hope I've not made you late for anything else. But thank you, as always, for all of your input, the advice that you've given, the guidance that you've given everybody in the chat. I really, really do appreciate it. And I think next month we are doing the next live on the 24th of February. If you pop on to our Monetary Fundraising website, you can book for next session already, and actually you can book for March's session, which is on the 24th of March as well, so you can be super organized and get them all booked in. And I think we're going to have a look at some more of this prioritization side of things. If you have any suggestions, anything from this today, or anything from the landscape that you want to go through and discuss, please do drop me a note, and we can add that into our sessions. As always, your input is really, really important. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been lovely to see you all today. I've really enjoyed today's session, and like I said, it should be available on YouTube to rewatch next week. Hope you have a brilliant rest of the day and a fantastic week, and I will see you all again on the 24th of February. Take care, everyone. Bye, everyone.